So many, 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 many. Why so many? Just look at this variety. Variety that can fit each and every unique individual with its unique needs and on which everyone can depend on. What can help turning this into an epidemic? A contemporary society's glory of capital, satisfaction, and paradox. We create variations as a result of overproduction. But why do we overproduce in the first place? Are we getting addicted not only to the product, but to the desire for the avalanche itself? The idea of overproduction is not new and has spread far wider than simply above-mentioned over-manufacturing of antidepressant medication. With a visible tendency of unmanaged accelerationism, this also stretches to the generic idea of workaholism that unfortunately never deserved a deeper look than a surface glance. Coming up with new terms, we never look further at how they transform, where they lead, and what they connect to. What is such pattern of overperformance becoming? A new religion? A cult? An escape? Treatment? Or a medication of its own? Recently, a new term has emerged, workism, which, we can argue, with the decline of traditional religions across some parts of the world, can be seen as the one of new micro-faiths appearing crosswise society. Some people worship beauty, some worship political identities, and some worship work. In the end, we all believe in something. Over the last century, the notion of work has accelerated from means of material to identity production. Certainly for the majority of the world, having a job still remains a necessity, but for the college-educated elite, lately it began to morph into a type of religion, with the promise of identity, transcendence and community instead of heavens, eternity and absolute truth. From Apple's highly inspirational videos about developers working for their dreams through nights while the world sleeps, to the pressuring idea that successful people find pride in lack of rest and working instead of partying, a significant shift in human consciousness is happening. A replacement of values that becomes a very effective way to prop up an exploitive system of labor and social relations. This global epidemic of overscheduling and hustling continues to grow and is, most importantly, ruining our health. There is already a crazy tyranny of our own expectations to be the ideal worker, jump up a career ladder and be the ideal partner in life, parent and sibling, so with an added layer of fanatic ideologization that oddly enough flirts with the idea of pleasure through physical suffering, it becomes hard to keep up the game. In such scenario, there has to be something that covers this way of living under a pleasant, glossy blanket and sells it to you in the most attractive packaging. The attractive packaging of feeding, entertaining, massaging and even healing that began to be offered by big companies such as Google or Facebook in order to attract and keep the best talent. The attractive packaging that grew, extended and started to remind Soviet propaganda, prompting the impossible-seeming feats of worker productivity that motivates the labor force. Overcoming workism means rehabilitating leisure as something more meaningful than mere distraction or recharging from the weekday. But that requires a complete renovation of culture, and unfortunately, that is not the direction of the current tide. Hashtag, thanks God it's Monday. The cult of busy, in search for an alluring umbrella, seems to have surrendered too much to the self-help gurus and pop psychologists, and now the paradox is in action. Aristotle wrote in 350 BC that happiness is thought to depend on leisure, for we are busy that we may have leisure, and make war that we may live in peace. Whilst Johann Huizinga, in his work Homo Ludens, Man the Player, identified play as the basis of culture, and in spite of that, today we live in a society where people work longer hours with fewer holidays and dedicate themselves to largely passive activities in their spare time, calling all these happiness. The tendency took off, twistedly as it is, to show how proud we are that we love what we do, a promotion of that very same love starts. Through social media, mixing search for appreciation with our personal development, identities and values, we create a subconscious stimuli to keep on loving what we do. Even LinkedIn is building its own version of stories. Why wouldn't it? I am a happy creative. I want to share positively with the world. My positivity makes me more productive, and I desire to be productive. I hustle. We've all definitely gotten a little hungry for meaning. Happiness has become our new organized religion, or better to say, a behavioral pattern of the ideal worshipper. Happiness that doesn't waste a minute of precious time. Ultra happy, ultra productive. Today, happiness is screamed at us in the most absolutist way. It wants to prove that nothing else exists apart from it. No one wants you to waste your time on negative feelings, anxieties, and enlightening fears. Stay happy. Stay profitable. Today, the possibility of tracking emotions is key to the dynamics that control the neoliberal economy. Be positive and satisfied. From carving on cucumbers at WeWork, co-working spaces to posters and gifts online, sentences chase you down with their oppressive demands. Hustle harder. Do what you love. Don't stop when you're tired. Stop when you're done. Let them sleep while you grind. Stay positive. Work hard. Make it happen. We jump and push as told, accelerating in positive thinking whilst denying existence of fear and sadness, concern and doubt. Artificially degrading our survival instincts and promoting a way of thinking that, if unregulated, only fuses blindness and inaction in the society. As pointed out by Barbara Ehrenreich in one of her books, Bright-Sided, while the population of the USA has embraced the positive ideology, it also creates 2/3 of the global market supply of antidepressants that in their turn become the most widely prescribed drugs in the USA. Are we depressed because we aren't happy, tired, and authentic? Or is it because of the constant demand for happiness? Thus, self-help industry turned out to be a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. Harmless on their own, and with the right doses, the law of attraction, hope and mindfulness movement are now mixed with the catalyst, the absolutist thinking that is representative of contemporary generation and unveils hidden dangers. Now, mindfulness that envelops a big part of the hyper-positive ideology became nothing more than basic concentration training. Stripped of original Buddhist teachings and ethics that accompanied it, it remains solely as a tool of self-discipline, which, instead of setting its followers free, helps them adjust to the very conditions that caused the issue that brought them to the movement in the first place, reinforcing destructive logic. Stress has been pathologized and shamed, and the burden of managing it outsourced to individuals. Hence, the self-help culture arose. Tyranny of happiness tranquilizes us. Living in the physical reality, as much as we are driven by our minds, everything comes to somatic experiences. As prayers and spells are followed by rituals, when words stop satisfying and our natural hormones fail to help on their own, we turn to action, and the last act of our story is a connection of an allegory over placebo medication to the antidepressant misapplication. Little is talked about the abusive behavior that's growing in our society in relation to the antidepressants, and specifically in this case, the benzodiazepines such as Xanax and Valium. They work by suppressing the neurological activity in our brain, which alongside eliminates our ability to feel danger and tranquilizes us. Benzodiazepines, or benzos, can largely and safely improve lives of people with serious mental conditions, but only under strict supervision of professional medics. But unfortunately, due to both undertrained physicians, widespread availability, relatively low prices, and acceptance from the mainstream culture of today, they become easy targets for abuse, both recreational and self-medicating. This addictive quality becomes especially dangerous when benzos and opioids are taken at the same time, which is surprisingly common. More than 30% of deaths attributed to benzodiazepines in the USA also involve opioids, as when taken together, the drugs can suppress your ability to breathe. Although the abuse isn't the same as in US, in UK, to give another example, 366 people were killed by benzo-related overdoses in 2015 only, which is more than by cocaine, speed, or MDMA. The difference is that unlike in USA, UK's National Health Service is much stricter with prescribing benzos, considering addiction and withdrawal symptoms not worthy of widespreading such medication. Thus, people are left to turn to the streets, or darknet, to get them, where UK makes up 22% of global Xanax sales. The darknet scene right now is also particularly interesting. Made from alprazolam powder, which is concocted in labs and then sold on the darknet from Britain as well as countries like China, Portugal and Canada, Xanax became the main desire. The price varies depending on order size, but usually a gram is about $60, enough to make 500 2mg bars, which then get sold as 100 bars for around $65, which is a profit of more than 400%. But the question is, what stops this price from inflating or the quality from dropping? The main question is, why do these things even happen? Why do people take such risks to get Xanax, and how does that connect to the hyper-positive ideology and enthusiastic labour? Labour as your identity, reduction of leisure, collective, and the cult of positive. Hype, easily availability, seclusion, and price. If put into context like this, the appeal of turning to medication becomes obvious. But rarely does it connect together in regular discourse. We are playing within an exploitive system of labour and social relations, trying to prop it up by absolutist practice of a very specific ideology. Thus a conclusion becomes evident. We are simply seeking self-medication. We are seeking cure for something that is incurable. So what if our society can tackle the growing antidepressant abuse epidemic not by complexifying the treatment of symptoms, but by bringing up causes of our illness at first? But now, this is what we have. In a manic rush for productivity and action, we paradoxically enough have a danger of ending up in complete tranquility, derived of all emotions, even happiness, that seems to be so desirable. What is the gospel truth?